guess I was relieved to know that I had a cancer that was, readily treatable. So, I think I just kind of hung on to that and said, okay, we're good. I'm not going to be that 5% that.
For 10 years, millions of people invited Bill Klein, Dr. Jennifer Arnold, and their 2 children into their living rooms every week, watching a family build a life that looked nothing like the rest of reality television. When TLC's cameras finally stopped rolling, most viewers assumed the story simply ended there. It did not. In the years since, the family has navigated a corporate lawsuit that nearly buried the show's legacy, with a viral controversy involving their teenage son, relocated across the country twice for Jen's career, and quietly rebuilt an entirely new kind of public life built on medicine, advocacy, and intermittent glimpses on social media rather than scripted television. And now, in 2026, they are stepping back into the spotlight in a way nobody expected. To understand how unusual this family story really is, you have to go back to where it began, long before any camera crew was involved. Bill Klein and Jen Arnold both have a form of skeletal dysplasia called spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, a rare genetic condition affecting bone growth that results in short stature. Both grew up enduring an extraordinary number of medical procedures. Jen underwent more than 30 surgeries over the course of her life, and Bill accumulated more than 20 of his own. Remarkably, the 2 of them crossed paths decades before they ever became a couple. Around the age of 10, both children happened to be recovering from surgeries related to their dwarfism at the same hospital. Bill would later recall glancing into a young girl's hospital room. Jen, heavily medicated at the time, remembered none of it. 20 years passed before fate brought them back together, this time through an online dating platform. Their courtship developed quickly despite the distance between them, since a community of little people able to date one another is small and spread across the country. Bill eventually boarded a plane to meet Jen in person, and by April 2008, the 2 were married more than a year before the little couple ever premiered on TLC. Their relationship, in other words, was never built for the cameras. It simply happened to be discovered by them. When the show debuted in 2009, it told the story of 2 accomplished professionals navigating marriage, medicine, and disability, rather than a manufactured premise built around novelty. Jen worked as a neonatologist, a highly specialized doctor responsible for caring for the most fragile newborns, while Bill built a career as an entrepreneur. Audiences watched the couple confront fertility struggles and pregnancy losses long before they eventually became parents through adoption. And that honesty about hardship was part of what set the show apart from many of its reality television contemporaries. Over 12 seasons, the family expanded, relocated, and weathered a series of genuine medical and emotional crises in front of the cameras, all while quietly drawing very firm lines around what the public was permitted to see. Those boundaries became especially important as the couple pursued parenthood. After multiple pregnancy losses, including a heartbreaking late setback involving a surrogate, Bill and Jen turned to international adoption. In March 2013, they adopted their son, Will, from China, and just 7 months later, in October 2013, they adopted their daughter, Zoey, from India. The proximity of the 2 adoptions surprised some viewers, but the couple later explained they had been on waiting lists for years before the opportunity for Zoey's adoption arose unexpectedly, meaning the timing was a matter of circumstance rather than a deliberate plan. Recognizing how disruptive television production could be to children adjusting to an entirely new family, country, and language, Bill and Jen made a decision to shut down filming for roughly 6 weeks after each adoption, so Will and Zoey could bond with their new parents away from cameras. Zoey's early adjustment, in particular, was far more difficult than what eventually appeared on screen, and the family later acknowledged that many of the hardest moments from that period were intentionally never filmed at all. That same instinct toward privacy carried through Jen's subsequent health crisis. In December 2013, she was diagnosed with stage 4 choriocarcinoma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer connected to a non-viable pregnancy she had experienced earlier that year. She made the personal choice to allow cameras to document her treatment, a decision Bill later said was entirely hers to make. But the family continued to draw the line at exactly how much of their daily struggle the public was allowed to witness. Behind the scenes, the production itself was never as seamless as it appeared. Many of the milestones audiences believe were happening in real time, including birthdays and family celebrations, had often genuinely occurred privately first and were recreated afterward for the cameras, simply because real family life rarely unfolds on a shooting schedule. Jen's professional environment added another layer of complexity, since filming inside Texas Children's Hospital required lengthy negotiations to satisfy hospital administrators who needed assurance that patient privacy and medical protocols would be respected above entertainment value. As Will and Zoey grew older, the family pushed back even harder against making the children the focal point of the series, with Bill and Jen repeatedly emphasizing that the vast majority of their kids' daily lives, including school and friendships, stayed entirely off camera. By most accounts, the children themselves were fairly unbothered by the production crews around them, often simply asking camera operators to step out of the way rather than treating the cameras as anything special. As the show's profile grew throughout the 2010s, it also attracted its share of criticism. Some disability advocates questioned whether a series centered so directly on physical difference risked encouraging viewers to see Bill and Jen through a lens of sympathy rather than recognizing their professional accomplishments on their own terms. Other critics took the opposite position, arguing the show occasionally made family life look too tidy and resolved, a perception that existed largely because the family's hardest private struggles, including much of Zoey's adjustment period, were never shown at all. Living in Houston during the height of the show's popularity also brought less comfortable consequences, including fans occasionally showing up uninvited at the family's home, an experience that underscored the tension between visibility and privacy that came with their unusual level of fame. That tension eventually collided with something far less personal, a corporate legal battle. By the late 2010s, the production company behind the little couple, LMNO Cable Group, found itself locked in a contentious dispute with Discovery Communications, TLC's parent company, over accounting practices and control of intellectual property tied to the show and other unscripted programming. In 2017, Bill and Jen moved to intervene in that litigation directly, arguing they were entitled to additional compensation and attempting to regain greater control over the intellectual property rights connected to their own family story and likeness. The case dragged on for years. In May 2020, a federal court ruled against the more sweeping portions of their claims, rejecting allegations of fraud and denying their effort to reclaim those intellectual property rights outright, though a narrower breach of contract claim was permitted to continue. By the time the dust settled, the litigation had effectively ended the show's future regardless of the legal outcome. Filming had already stopped amid the uncertainty, and no new episodes followed the family's 10th and final season in 2019. What followed was a series of relocations that mapped closely onto Jen's evolving medical career. In 2017, the family moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, after Jen accepted a position at Johns Hopkins All-Children's Hospital. They remained there for several years before relocating again in 2021 to Natick, Massachusetts, just outside Boston, after Jen was appointed to lead the simulation program at Boston Children's Hospital and joined the faculty at Harvard Medical School. That move briefly sparked online rumors that the couple had quietly separated, since fans struggled to understand why a family so associated with Houston and Florida would suddenly relocate to New England. Jen addressed the speculation directly during an Instagram Live session shortly after the move, confirming that she and Bill were very much still together and that the relocation was simply about the next chapter of her career. Those rumors have continued to resurface periodically in the years since, and each time, Bill and Jen have shot them down with affectionate social media posts, including a 2025 anniversary tribute marking 17 years of marriage, in which Jen wrote that every day with Bill was a reminder of how lucky she was to have him as her partner. Bill, meanwhile, has continued building his own business, ventures away from medicine entirely. He remains the owner of Rocky and Maggie's, the pet boutique and grooming business he originally opened in Houston back in 2012, and has expanded into Rocky and Maggie's Pet Products, a company focused on developing and distributing pet care items, including a specialty product known as the Pop-Up Pad. He has also explored stand-up comedy and other entrepreneurial projects in recent years, continuing the reputation for humor and resilience that defined his public persona on the original series. Where Jen's post-show life has been defined by institutional credibility and academic advancement, Bill's has remained rooted in the same scrappy, self-starting entrepreneurial spirit fans first saw when he opened a small pet shop in Rice Village more than a decade ago, a contrast that mirrors the same complementary dynamic that made their marriage compelling television in the first place. Public attention to the family did not disappear after the show ended, but it shifted shape entirely, surfacing now through brief, unpredictable moments rather than a weekly broadcast. In 2023, a TikTok video featuring Will, then 13 years old, performing a dance trend set to a song containing explicit lyrics, circulated widely online and sparked a debate about parental oversight of teenagers on social media, a controversy that, like most viral moments, faded from public conversation within a matter of weeks. In 2024, Jen resurfaced publicly in a far more serious context, sharing an update from Florida in the aftermath of severe hurricane damage in the region, describing the process of checking on family and assessing destruction, while also revealing the loss of a close friend and colleague during that same period. Through all of it, the family's visibility on social media has remained intentional and controlled in much the same way their television presence once was, offering glimpses rather than a continuous narrative. By 2025 and into 2026, both Will and Zoey have grown into teenagers, Will turning 16 in February, and Zoey turning 14 the previous September, milestones their parents marked publicly with characteristic warmth on social media, rather than any kind of formal media rollout. Jen's professional life, meanwhile, has continued to expand well beyond clinical neonatology. She now serves in a leadership role at Boston Children's Hospital and continues teaching as faculty at Harvard Medical School, while also building a dedicated skeletal dysplasia program designed to support families navigating the same rare bone conditions she and Bill have lived with their entire lives. In interviews, she has explained that part of what drew them specifically toward international adoption of children with dwarfism was a desire to give back directly to a community she understood intimately, noting that many children with skeletal dysplasia abroad face abandonment because of their family circumstances and disability stigma, and that she and Bill felt a particular calling to bring a child like that into their own home. Her perspective as both a physician and a patient with a visible disability has positioned her increasingly within broader public conversations about disability representation in medicine, prenatal counseling practices, and the ethics surrounding how expectant parents are informed when a fetus is diagnosed with a genetic condition like the one she herself was born with. That work represents a meaningful evolution from her role on television, where the show once introduced audiences to the lived experience of skeletal dysplasia through the lens of one family's daily life. Her current work involves shaping how medical institutions themselves think about counseling, care, and respect for patients whose bodies fall outside typical expectations, an extension of the same advocacy that defined her years in front of the cameras, just now conducted from behind a hospital administration desk and a Harvard lecture podium rather than a TLC soundstage. And then in March 2026, came the announcement that genuinely surprised longtime fans who had assumed the family's media presence was permanently behind them. Jen took to social media to reveal that she and Bill were finally launching a podcast together, tentatively pitched to fans with the working title Bill and Jen Make a Podcast, produced in collaboration with a former member of their original television production team. The announcement generated an outpouring of enthusiasm from fans who had followed the family for more than a decade, many of whom express hope that this new chapter might offer the same warmth and honesty that made the original series resonate so deeply, just without a network's editorial control shaping the story this time. Looking back across everything the family has navigated since the camera stopped rolling in 2019, what stands out most is not any single scandal or controversy, but the deliberate way Bill and Jen have continued shaping their own narrative entirely on their own terms. They fought and largely lost a legal battle over ownership of their own story. They weathered relocations, viral controversies, and natural disasters with the same quiet resilience that defined their years on television. And rather than fading entirely from public view or returning to the format that once defined them, they have built something new, a life that belongs to them first and to their audience only when they choose to share it.